for one reason or another, due to trauma, emotional space, especially around sexuality, it's very common for a partner, one or the other or both, to move to a disassociated space. So the first thing you want to do is you want to recognize that there is disassociation. For example, if you say to me, hey, I don't feel anything in my body, you want to make a note of that. Because not feeling has a feeling. And so the first thing is to kind of calibrate where you are, to notice where you are, and to say, okay, I'm not feeling anything. Well, there's a feeling of no feeling. What is that feeling? So it's like starting to expand the lexicon of feeling and sensations in the body. So when most people say, I don't feel, what they're really saying is that I don't have a language for feeling, and I only know how to articulate these gross sensations. What I mean by gross, what I mean is large sensations. Hot, cold, warm, cool, tasty, salty, savory, pain, unhappy, sadness, depression. But there's this whole realm of experience in between that. And that is kind of where you want to start to notice, is like, okay, well, something that I'm calling, let's say, fear, is actually this incredibly rich realm of sensation. And if you can start to take, instead of the word fear, which is like, groups things into this little small sort of palatable candy bar, and go, well, wait a minute. Not only is there fear, but like my toes are crunching, and I'm noticing that I'm really holding my butt, squeezing it tight, and my stomach muscles are tense, and I'm clenching my jaw, and all of this gets tied up in fear. Well, that unraveling or unwinding or pulling apart of dense sensation and finding what the little sub-sensations are is the beginning of opening up to subtle energy. So, if somebody is unable to feel, oftentimes it's more like they don't have yet the distinctions in their brain for these more subtle pieces. And so we'll just focus on something simple like breathing or tingling in the fingertips or something, because we in fact can feel, but we've never been able to distinguish and make those distinctions of subtle changes in the energy field.
How about thinking yourself off?
One of my favorite things to do, by the way. One of my favorite things to do is to think myself off. So for me, what that means is that I may have a little fantasy that comes up, or I might have a little attraction that comes in, and I may be like, wow, I want to pursue this, but do I really want to pursue this? Like, do I want to go and meet the person and get their phone number and deal with all their issues and have these kinds of experiences and negotiate that out and talk to my partners and blah, 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 and all this stuff? And I'm like, too much work, not interested. But surfing that sensation and giving myself permission to like go into that sensation and begin to savor that sensation and have that very rich experience in my inner space, and then furthermore spread that throughout my body. Now we're talking about the realms of beginning to think yourself off. So one of my favorite, sometimes my morning meditation, my spiritual meditation is like, I'll get up in the morning and I'll just and go to those things that just make me feel really good and juicy and turned on inside. And that's my meditation, and it's beautiful. And I feel like I deserve that. I mean, why wouldn't I do that? It's kind of like, you have this beautiful body. It's incredibly rich and sensory rich. It's composed of all of these beautiful things. You have something that runs from this point to that point in your brain, these nerves and dendrites and bilateral communication that is like, I want more of that. I want to expand that. I want to feel that. And that is the process of thinking myself into ecstasy, thinking myself into bliss. And I really love it because, like you can do it through, there's lots of practices that are really dry. They kind of remind me of eating dry crackers, like sort of eating lots of dry crackers in the desert, and you're just kind of like, yeah, I guess I could get to transcendent spaces this way, or I could move to something that makes me feel really good and wonderful and juicy inside, makes me feel connected and open and connected to my infinite nature, connected to the expansiveness of the universe, which then changes the breathing pattern that I have and changes the color of my skin. And give permission to that spread in my body, and wow, something. I mean, it's already starting, and that's the beauty. It's almost like we're learning to do jujitsu with ourselves, and instead of doing I'm going to be miserable and depressed and sort of take whatever vomit my brain has thrown out in the morning, it's like, no, I'm going to start cultivating more and more of what I want to experience, both within myself, first within myself, and then potentially with another partner. Yeah. It's great. I mean, I worked with a young woman recently who had really, her view of sex was about the size of a slice of chocolate mud cake. It happened in these specific ways, in these forms, at these times. And so I just simply did, again, fully clothed, and just simply placing a hand here and saying, hey, feel what this feels like. Begin to open your feeling world. And then, of course, by my being able to go first and dive in and begin to kind of just open up this language, these feeling, shaking, breathing, sound, smelling, pleasure-filling spaces, and just opening them and being comfortable with them, of course, then this person starts to experience that, and it's like, oh, you just blew my mind. Like, I didn't even know this was possible. And most people will go through their lives not knowing this is possible. That's why I'm really excited about sharing this material and these experiences on camera, because it's like you really have to begin to see what's possible in order to know what is possible for you to experience. And trust me, it is a big, infinitely expanding universe of pleasure that is open to you.
Is there anything else you want to say about energetic sex?
Okay, so part of the thing is understanding that it's natural for us to move into sync or harmony with one another. And it's the expanding of those harmonics with one another where you are able to kind of feel your own energy and feel the vibe, let's just call it the vibe of another person, and just make a decision to share and circulate that vibe. So that you're being vulnerable in your desire for pleasure, you're sharing that with another person, letting them see you in that, and then in essence circulating that back to the other person. In a way, it's a kind of a feedback loop, or it's kind of a what I would call more like a vulnerability loop. It's like a willingness to be vulnerable in my pleasure, and rather than being all about the doing, it's almost moving to the space of not doing and expanding. So sexuality for me, we could say, is made up of breath, sound, movement, and silence. It's really four major elements. Of course, there's an infinite flavor in between those, but there's four major elements, including silence and stillness. And so when you're working with sexual energy, it's understanding that there are spaces between spaces, that there are movements of things where where the vibe is kind of has a certain thing, and then it shifts and changes. And instead of resisting that, or beating yourself up, or feeling like your partner isn't satisfying you, you go, well, wait a minute, let's expand this. Let's explore this. What is this sensation here? What is this? And so energetic sexuality is like beginning to open up the spaces between the doing and exploring those, like the spaces between the musical notes, the spaces between action and reaction, action and action. There's something in that magic in between where the body starts to vibrate alive, where your breath is there, where things tingle and things feel good and something incredible is happening right now. That's the space of energetic sexuality.